As much as I'd like to be frustrated over some of the responses I've gotten to the reparation videos, I'm not surprised and I really can't be frustrated because a lot of people don't have the historic knowledge on why a repair is necessary for some people and not for other people. And then you have this feeling of, I didn't do it, which is one of the primary feelings you're going to get. But really, the visceral responses are more about the Bacon's Rebellion born idea of non whites getting the same privilege as poor whites. That's where the argument is. Well, the response is there. The argument is between rich whites and poor whites. And the nobody should get anything, I didn't do it, all of those things are generally a rebellion of closing that social gap because it's may not even be a wealth gap, but that's where you get a lot of these responses, especially the visceral ones. But the biggest is, I didn't do it, so why should I pay? If you are an American, if you are a naturalized citizen, if you are a natural born citizen, if you are an immigrant, if you are someone who has come or has been born in the nation and benefits from all that is the nation or all that is about the nation, you are a beneficiary of the injustices that made those benefits available. Now, some people say, well, what happened back then was the sacrifice for what we have now. Well, that's true, but everybody also knows there's no free ride for anybody, and we all have to pay. So, even if you did not do the harm, you are still benefiting from the harm that was done. Number two, you are not paying anything. You say, well, my tax money is. You have zero control of where your tax money goes anyway. You didn't vote on your tax money going to overseas wars. So why not have it go to another possibly more productive venue that would increase domestic economics, domestic business, domestic education? Why would we not put that money there as opposed to sending money out to Israel by the hundreds of billions and never seeing it again? If I take something of yours and it is clearly yours and I give it to my son, the fact that I give it to my son does not stop it from being yours. There was an injustice that had been done wrong, that you had been wronged by. Your issue is with your property, no matter who has it. In a system that someone has wronged a group of people and passed it down, the issue is with the wrong, not with the people in possession of it. If you have possession of stolen property, the fact that you didn't steal it does not give you a right to keep the title to it. The person still must be repaired once you know that that person is the owner of the property. Now, the owner of the property. Some of the answers have been, well, how do we know who the people can come up with a lot of questions as to why it's a problem as opposed to why hasn't it been done. Well, what Native Americans are we going to repair? How about we add how do we know which ones to do it? How about the Native Americans tell us? It's always the empowered group discussing how they're going to repair the persons that they harmed. Beyond that, somebody which was horrible information. I think they said it was some horribly off number. Like there were 29,000 people that were actively involved in chattel slavery. 29,000. Now, at that point, I had to correct them. There were 4 million people in bondage in 1865. So I don't know how they got less than 30,000 people were in slavery. But then reparations is not just about slavery. It is about economic repair, systematic economic deprivation. That deprivation lasted 100 years after 1865. So it's funny how people are reaching to say that we don't know who the descendants of slaves are. Okay, fine. Let's repair the people from 1960s. Let's repair the people from 1950s. They're still walking around. 1940s. My grandmother, who just passed away this year, was born in the 1920s. It's not hard to find those people. We know that they were born under Plessy. We know they were born into Jim Crow. We know they were born into black codes. We know they were redlined. But it's funny, and I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So these people who are coming up with these reasons to bat this back, there was 100 years, 65 in the 20th century, that this deprivation took place. So, okay, fine. Let's say you don't know anything about slavery. What are you doing about what you do know? 1965 is when black people got to be citizens. I was born in 1971. So a whole bunch of relatively young folks that have been deprived are walking around now. But now what's the issue with repairing these people? They know the people who had title to land to Seneca Village. Why don't you whack up that $9 billion piece of property? They know which Native Americans they killed. They know which tribes they moved. And some genius said that the American welfare system is reparations for Native American genocide. Now, we're going to just skip over the fact that there's more white people on welfare than it is anybody on welfare, because there's more white people. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with white people, but it's just more white people. But more specifically, that's somebody just looking for any reason to be cantankerous. Because what does United States welfare have to do with a Native reservation? They are they're independent. They own their own land. The United States doesn't have authority on their reservation. Therefore, their welfare, the United States welfare system, is not on the reservation. So it's like people are coming up with any reason. I didn't do it. Who's going to get it? Um, we've done enough. Casinos. We gave them casinos. Okay, fine. How many casinos would it take to be equivalent to the state of Massachusetts or the state of New York, the state of Delaware, the state of New Jersey? How many casinos would be equal to that? Now, I told you Central Park is 9 trillion. We're talking Manhattan. How many casinos would you need for Manhattan? You see how dumb that statement is? And I understand that cognitive dissonance has become part of American culture as to where we do not understand anymore how we can accept responsibility of a history that benefits us, in that we owe recognition and reconciliation to the people who paid that initial price. We can't tell them to run as fast as we can when we took their shoes or we're wearing their shoes. It's a mix of lack of education, a mix of lack of sensitivity, a mix of competition that has desensitized Americans to the point that we are inhumane. But then again, was our dominant culture ever humane? This is the same group that commodified humans. This is the same group that committed genocide toward the natives. It's the same group that forced Mexico off of northernmost North American continent. So part of our history is a lack of humanity. My only charge is, say you don't care. Don't try to put forth a intellectual or social or economic argument that is nonsensical or under-researched or unresearched. Just say, I don't care. Say, I don't care about those people. I'm worried about me. But other than that, I'm hoping there are some people who just don't know. And that's who these videos are for. But even, especially the empty wagons make the most noise. So I know I'm going to get the responses from the people who just, they want to be in the conversation. They're just not equipped. So they'll just say something stupid. And my desire is to include them, because obviously they want to say something, but they just don't have the wit to say something intelligent. But I think the biggest part of reparations, and reparations is not a huge issue with me, but in addressing it, I think it brings up a lot of emotions, especially in poor whites that maintain that poor whites against non-whites, as opposed to poor whites against rich whites. And it's easier to punch, in their minds, down than up. So I really find the biggest issue with reparations is the fact that if we're talking about black reparations, Negro reparations, that people act as though reparations is a slavery issue. That's not what reparations is about. Reparations is about economic deprivation being repaired. If that is so, we have 100 years of people we know exactly who they are, not descendants from slaves necessarily, but black folk in the 20th century, not the 19th century. Now what?